head came out. And I was like, oh my God. In that moment, I realized I'm birthing at home and it worked. And oh my God, I did it. And I had to cry. And we just enjoyed. And we sat there. I was in the bath with my baby on my chest, my husband around me. My baby boy was still asleep. And it was just, it was very holy and very, very good for
I
us.
had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like I could feel his head, I could do my own internal, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears, I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you today, Jolien?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So great to have you here, all the way from Holland or the Netherlands. What do you share? What do you say when people say, where are you from?
It totally depends on the language I'm speaking. So in English, I always say the Netherlands. But if you speak Spanish or German, most of the times it's Holland or Hollandia. So it depends on the language.
Yeah, I'm always so confused. I just shared that with you before starting. So as a Swede, I don't know. You have two names for your country in my brain.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
I also don't know why, but it is the case. Yeah.
That's so funny. Anyways, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about your birth stories. So you've had two babas, and we're going to talk about both of them. For anyone listening, we're going to start with the first one, which did end up being kind of all the interventions in the end and what you describe as traumatic. And then we're going to dive on into your home birth that was successful and something that you are very happy about sharing. So with no further ado, we will dive on into the first one, being a first-time mom, deciding to have a home birth, but in the end, transferring after 4 days of being in prodromal labor. So tell us the story, please.
Yeah. So in 2022, we got pregnant. It was very intentional. So we were really delighted and very happy. I had a very normal pregnancy up to 20 weeks. Then my hips started to have a lot of troubles. And in the Netherlands, it's very normal to have a polyclinical birth, as in you go to the hospital with your own midwife, and then you give birth there when everything goes well. And if you need any medical care, you're right there. So that's what we decided. And then I remember around 20 weeks, a lot of changes were also physical, but also mentally, because a friend of mine, Sarah, has been on the podcast. We were pregnant together, both of a boy, and she introduced me to the podcast. And I started listening to this podcast for many hours. I was really intrigued and inspired. And that also helped change towards having a home birth. So in the beginning, I thought, no, I want to go to the hospital. And then I listened to the podcast. Plus, we did a hypnobirthing course where they talk about also physiological birth and how pain can be reduced, and that home is that you need to create some safe space around yourself to have a nice and peaceful birth. So I remember that was around 22 weeks, and it's just funny to know that in the end of a year, podcast always tells you, or Spotify always tells you how many hours you listen to something. And I've listened in that year, 2023, for 75 hours to the Natural Birth podcast. So just to show I was really intrigued. So I wished for myself and for my baby a home birth. So we changed it, and we also started to make our birth plan. or wishes. And then I think with 32 weeks, around 32 weeks, we discussed the birth plan. And then we found out that besides the fact that the midwives were really kind people and like I felt very safe there, they couldn't directly say like, oh yeah, whatever you wish, we do. So we got a couple of points where I really didn't want to give in, which were they wanted to check me internal every so now and then. And I asked them like for what reason. I used brains. That's something from the hypnobirthing course. And they couldn't really explain themselves. It was just protocol. And I wanted them to see me as a person and not protocol. And I want them to feel confident at my birth because I needed that because it was my first birth. So in the end, they had a talk with, there were 6 midwives there. They had a meeting about my birth plan. And then they came back and they said like, okay, on this we can, and this we cannot, and this we want, and this we don't want to. So in the end, they said to us, and we also felt like this is not the right midwives anymore. You could go to Nive. I think it's called Nive at the moment. I'm not sure if it was then, but it changed names at least. And it's the only one in the southern part of the Netherlands that actually really believes in the strength of a woman and the physiological birth. And yeah, they're a little bit more, they dare to go out of protocols and be a bit more with the woman, with the mother, than being, yeah, like what they have to do in order to. So we went there and lovely intake, felt at the beginning right. And I thought, okay, let's change and have a home birth. And they didn't ask that much because they heard that I was really well informed. I had thought about it, read about it. I read a couple of books about it. So yeah. And that was, I think, at 34 weeks pregnancy. So in the end, we switched. And I only had one more checkup, and that's it, actually. I think they did just wanted to make sure that the baby was really with his head down. And I think that was with 39 weeks or something. I think 39 weeks. And everything was good, and he was really low in the pelvic, like really low already. And then I remember with exactly 40 weeks of pregnancy, I lost my mucus plug. And I wasn't sure at the moment. In hindsight, I am. But my water broke. But not as in the gushing way. It was a hot summer day also, the whole week. So I was always like, okay, is this sweaty or am I leaking water or am I peeing myself or what is it? Well, it was water because every time I bended forward or I made a movement where, then just a little bit came out. So we decided not to inform the midwives directly because I knew the risks and I knew that protocol in the Netherlands is that after 24 hours, you have to go into the hospital, you have to be induced, blah, blah, blah. And we've already before the start of the birth, we already decided if that happens, we stay at home. And of course, it doesn't need to be colored and I don't need to have fever. Like we're not going to take unnecessary risks, but if everything is fine, we can stay at home. So that night, contractions started. They were doable. It was the first time, so I found them pretty painful. And if I look back at the course we did, the hypnobirthing course, they made me believe a little bit too much that it wasn't that painful and that you could, with your mind, really redirect the pain. With me, that didn't work. So we just did everything we did and it was fine. And then in the morning, we gave my best friend a call because we invited her to be at the birth. And I think as we called her, it stopped. So she came Wednesday morning. and yeah, nothing was going on anymore. So we tried to, yeah, we had a walk. I have a dog, a Belgian Shepherd, so she needs a lot of walking. So we did a walk. It was beautiful weather. We went outside. Walking went really well as well still. And then, yeah, at night she stayed over, but then downstairs. So we had the upper floor for ourselves. And it did start, but not as much as the day before. So then Thursday morning, oh, and Wednesday, I'm sorry. Wednesday, we did call the midwives to inform them. And unfortunately, the midwifery was 3 women. The one I had the intake with was the owner. She was really relaxed, confident, and how I would say that in English. Like she would a lot. She wouldn't mind to take risks if that would support the mom. But the one we had the phone call with, she started directly with the risks of broken water and everything that comes to it, which we already knew, but I didn't want to hear that again. So I remember after that phone call, my husband and we decided, okay, I'm not going to do phone calls anymore. You're going to do the talks to the midwives and doctors and whatnot we're going to see. Just to make sure that whatever he brings to me, he knows me best, that it's in safe words and it's in like no stress related words. And then she also advised us to take the temperature and to keep looking at the water that came out if it's still clear. So we did that. Everything was fine. I had a very good contact with my baby. He moved a lot. I knew he was fine. So we went through the night again. Wednesday, Thursday, friend was staying here and nothing really happened. So then we decided, just a couple of contractionists, I think, that she would go back to work and we would be together again. And the midwives also advised us to go to the hospital on Thursday because it was already 72 hours, 48 hours, something like that, to check if I have a bacteria, something. You go there and then they check if there's a bacteria that could cause an infection.
I think you're thinking about GBS potentially, but actually to take that test, it takes a while for you to get the results back. It doesn't happen instantaneously. Maybe it was just to check, make sure that you didn't have any kind of infection brewing.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah.
Because the results came back really quickly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then we'll probably a blood test then.
Okay, yeah, well, it was on the inside of my vagina. They took something, a test, a monster, and then they checked it. So we went to the hospital to do that. And I remember we were standing there and the results were good, she said. There's nothing to see or to worry about, but please wait, I have to check something. And this was, I think, the nurse. And I said to my husband, she's not going to check anything. She's going to get the doctor and the doctor is going to talk to me and he's going to talk to me into a lot of fear. I'm not capable of handling that at the moment. So I'm going to go downstairs and my husband stayed. So I went.
Beautiful. I love this for you. If anyone's listening, like, this is how you do it. Just follow your mama wisdom. Yeah, you don't need to hear all the fear propaganda.
No, because I knew that already and I'm very much informed and they knew as well. So I went downstairs and the funny part is I will come back to this point especially because 2 years later with my second one, they actually remembered me of leaving the hospital. Yeah, I come to this later. But yeah, so I went downstairs and then it took him ages. That at a certain point I'm calling like, hey, what's going on? Are you coming? Like it was more than 30 minutes. And they did get the doctor and he talked and he also almost persuaded him to get me back because he was really not fond that I left highly pregnant, broken water. And he was like, she needs to be here, this and be here and blah, blah, blah.
Naughty, naughty woman.
Yes, I really was.
What I mean, it's
Yeah.
just the patriarchy in the maternity system and just like that
Mm,
talking
yeah.
down like the
Like, how
silly woman.
dare I?
How dare you have an opinion
Yeah.
about this?
Yeah.
I'm the obstetrician here. I'm the doctor. I know better than you, silly,
Indeed.
silly woman.
Yeah. So he was pretty, well, not aggressive, but passive aggressive, maybe you could call it. But my husband stood his grounds, and he came down, and we went out and we had lunch. We tried to put our minds on something different so that my body could do his thing, her thing, and then it actually started again. So during lunch, I was like, "Oh yes, these are contractions. I didn't have them before in this intensity." Um, we went home. I think we still had dinner a little bit, went to bed, and it really kicked in. So I was really in my head like, this is it. This is it. So he put on the birthing bath in a different room. And we did call my friend again, like, okay, now it's really going on this morning. Just wait a couple of hours more. You don't have to be here right now. It's not that far yet, but we think it's going to happen. And then I think at 8 in the morning or something, 9 in the morning, she stepped in. And I think an hour before it just stopped again.
Mm.
So I remember that I was really devastated because I didn't sleep for 3 days properly, for 3 nights. I tried to sleep during the day. I was too excited. I think I rested definitely, but sleeping not much. Um, And somehow during Friday, I didn't eat, or we forgot to eat. We were busy. We called the midwives to come over and just to check because I wanted to be checked now. I really needed to know, okay, how far am I? Was this just a beginning? Do I need to go into labor? Or like, yeah. So she came around 2, and this was the third lady. So still not the first one I talked to, not the second one on Wednesday, but the other one. And she was really nice, very kind. She went inside, and I didn't feel anything. She even swept the membrane, or at least she said she thought she was doing that because of the broken water. She wasn't sure if the membrane was still intact. But nothing hurt. Like, she did it really with consent, asking me if it's okay, this, that. Really, like, thank God for that woman. And then after that, we had a talk. And yeah, I was getting tired. I noticed that my belly wasn't round, beautiful round anymore. Like, I did see that there was water missing. I knew that water, like the water was, how you say that?
Replenishing itself.
Yeah, replenishing itself. So I knew that it wasn't like in need, very much need. But yeah, when I was lying down on my back, I could feel him on my ribs, for example. And before that, I didn't. So I shared that information with her, and that I'm getting a bit tired too because I haven't slept that much. And then she came, unfortunately, with a very scary story about the umbilical cord that could drop first, and then
Oh
he
my
would be
God.
birthed, and then he would
Stop. No.
suffocate.
Okay. No, okay. Stop it. Stop it. So you're on day 3 or something now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Broken
4 months.
waters.
Yeah,
4.
yeah.
Fine. Okay. If that was going to happen, it was going to happen. Like the
Mhm.
head is in the way, the head plugs. She
Yeah,
reaches in with her fingers. She would have felt if there was a cord. That is a very silly thing to tell a woman in labor. That is not going to happen. If she's in with her fingers, she would feel the baby's head, and she would feel if there was a cord there. She would feel if there was a pulsating cord there. She could instantly tell you if that was going to happen or not. The baby will not, like, if the baby's, no, the baby's head was like a cork.
yeah. And that's why my water didn't flow out that
Yes.
much. Yeah. But back then, this story I've never heard of. And I was like, oh my God. And she also said, like, because the water was so little, he could lie down on his umbilical cord and, yeah, suffocate himself. And that just came right into me, of course, because I
What
was
the
like, okay, I do want my home birth. I really do, but not risking the life of my baby, of course. And I trusted them being this more open-minded, more, yeah, not protocol, fear talking midwifery. Um, So when she shared that with us, we both said like, and also she actually found out that I didn't even have 1 centimeter dilation, very little. So I was just, how you say that, like um, there's a word for like your cervix just goes like this, and then it opens up.
It thins out.
It thins out, yeah. So only the thinning out actually happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, then my husband and I, we had a talk and we had a cry because we had to say, or we felt we had to say goodbye to our home birth. And we decided, I think at 3, to go to the hospital. She called first to the hospital we saw on Thursday, but that one was full. So we went to the close by hospital. And actually, before we left, my contractions started picking up again, and pretty heavily. And in hindsight, with my second pregnancy, my new midwife said that would be a sign for the midwife to say, okay, let's wait another couple of hours to see what maybe the sweeping of the membrane started. But we went into the car and went to the hospital. And everything I was afraid of that could have happened in the hospital kind of happened. So I will go through it, not in full details, but I remember this room where I just came and I had every 7 to 10 minutes, I had a very strong contraction. And there were like 4 or 5 people in the room. And one was trying to give me like infuse, like in your hand, for the what?
So she wanted to give you an IV cannula to give you oxytocin.
Yes,
Synthetic
thank you.
oxytocin.
Yes. And then this other one was the hospital midwife, very big lady, very impressive energy she had. And she wanted to go internal and check me again. And we were both like, well, we don't really feel like doing that. We already did it once at home, and I wasn't that far, so we don't see the reason to check it again. And she came with a very strong opinion that if we do not apply, she couldn't give it the care, and like, and I was in contractions, and there were a lot of people in the room, and I was like, okay, just do it and let's be over it. Like, okay. And my husband was really, are you sure? Because this is what you don't want to. And I'm like, do it, because she's fucking annoying. That was my internal voice. But so I laid down. She went inside, and the opposite of my midwife at home happened. She was very rough inside and big hands, and for me it felt like she really pushed herself inside my cervix. And then she came out and she said, like, yeah, that's only 1 centimeter. And I'm like, yeah, I probably could have told you that, but okay. I had to go to the toilet. I was bleeding. It was really a very traumatic experience, that specific moment.
Yeah.
And that was the start. And then they put me on oxytocin. And I really asked them, please start low. And they said, well, it's not really good for your womb, because it's already tired and it needs to get high doses of oxytocin and I said, I don't want it, please, slow. But I didn't know, like, I had to trust them if they would do it or not. And then luckily they put up a bath, so I went into the bath directly. Hindsight, maybe not the best idea, but for then it felt good. And then they wanted to monitor the baby's heartbeat. And on my birth wishes, I didn't want that, but I was like, okay, you guys really need that. That's fine. We're gonna comply with that.
Yeah,
But
well, really, when you put up synthetic oxytocin, you really need to see that the baby's coping. When
yeah,
you do go into the medicalized birth model, really not checking the baby's heart rate, that is, dangerous, because you're going to put drugs into your system that's going to stress potentially the baby much
yeah,
more so than a natural physiological birth.
There's no way. Yeah. So they tried that. And you would expect that if they offer you a bath, that they have the stuff that it sticks on your belly. And that didn't. So it constantly dropped. And then they got my heartbeat. Then the monitor went off, beeping, saying, hey, the baby's heartbeat is too low. Then they had to put it up. They had to put another band on it, which put more pressure on my belly.
Yeah.
And we were busy for an hour. And I was on the oxytocin and I didn't have one contraction because I was interrupted constantly. They even tried to have small talk with my husband why we were so against the hospital and why we waited so long before we went to the hospital with the broken water. After an hour, I just got angry, really frustrated. And I said, take this monitor thing off and leave me alone because I need to have contractions. I'm on the thing. I'm supposed to have contractions. So if they did that, they listened. I took it off, but I probably was now the woman that didn't want to have her baby monitored, which wasn't the case, but the thing didn't work. And it was stressing me way more than, When it would have worked, I would have been fine with that, but it didn't.
Yeah, so this is very common. This is actually not something it wasn't wrong with the CTG. It's just actually that poor, which means that usually if you have a CTG on for whatever reason, if you're going to have that in labor, most likely they'll want you to put a scalp electrode on your baby's head.
Yeah, I know, but that was a no-go for me.
Yes, great. Unfortunately, that is how most babies are born today in the hospital because the CTG it doesn't pick up very good and it does fall off. And then because the midwife are not present usually in the hospital room with you constantly to like just be with you, and you know that continuity of care doesn't really happen in the hospital system, they need the monitors to have on big screens out in their in the hallways or whatever in their offices, so that they can monitor several women at the same time through the electronic monitoring.
Yeah.
But I want to hear like what are the biggest takeaways from this birth journey so we can go into the positive empowerment for anyone who's now prepping to want to have a natural birth. Let's focus on that. So I want to share with us kind of just in short, how did it pan out and what were the biggest takeaways? Why do you think you kind of had the labor and birth you had?
Okay, so in the end, I labored in the bath without monitor and also without the oxytocin because I asked them to shut it off.
Very good.
So I labored for, I think, 5-6 hours. And then there was a shift of personnel and that changed it for me. So they came in, said goodbye. The other one came in and said, hello, this is us. And that took me out of my bubble. And then I was just so tired. So I asked for the epidural as well. And I think that if I had either a doula or a midwife that was really like caring for me, and they would have said to me like, hey, you're doing great. This is probably transition because I was really saying I can't do this anymore. I'm too tired. I can't handle it. Keep on, you're doing great, blah, blah. Like the love and support you need in that state.
Yeah.
I probably would have birthed it within 2 hours, but I didn't. They just said, do you want an epidural? Okay, that's fine. And then the epidural came. And then 8 hours later, I gave birth to my son. Within 20 minutes, he was out. Unfortunately on my back, but it went all right. I didn't had any ruptures or anything. So for the hospital, it was a good birth. For me, myself, a little less.
Yeah.
But then because of the long-term broken waters, we had to stay in the hospital a couple of days. And then on Sunday, we were allowed to leave because he also had to pee and everything. And well, so I think just again, all the things I had to say yes to were for me another reason to, okay, I really do not want to end up in the hospital. And because of listening to your podcast, I really thought that I had informed myself. I did a course. I thought I had the right midwives. But when we found out I was pregnant again, I really decided I need to make my own team around me, but even more than I thought I already did.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2024, I got pregnant again from my second child. And pretty early on, maybe even before I got pregnant, we already decided we're going to have a doula. No matter what, we're going to have a doula.
Yeah.
Because what happened in the hospital, we needed somebody else there to shield our bubble instead of my husband. Because my husband, he did the best job ever. He was there for me. He couldn't let go of me at all. But he also had to protect my wishes and the area. And yeah, so that was a lot for him. So a doula. And I contacted multiple doulas, and at a certain point, I didn't got any responses. And then I found somebody that actually knew a doula, and from that doula, she wasn't working anymore, but she had multiple, and I contacted those. So it was a bit more difficult, and I remember during that process, I was like, okay, maybe then no doula, maybe it's very difficult to get a doula. But in the end, we had with 3 different doulas an interview. And with 2 of them, it really felt good. In the beginning, I really wanted to have a doula with also a medical background so that she knows what could happen in the hospital. But the one without had this fierce energy, the softness and the strength. I don't know, I couldn't really describe it. It was just a click, and it felt really good, and I felt safe. I thought, if we end up in the hospital with you, you're gonna do the right thing, and you're gonna ask the right questions. And so we went with her. And the funny thing is, with this pregnancy, we went back to the first midwifery where we left in the first pregnancy, because the last one didn't really help us the way we wanted. And I thought naively that I maybe could compromise on some stuff and then be with that midwifery. But the doula also mentioned something new I never knew about, and that was a caseload midwife. And she explained it to me that is a midwife that is just herself, and she is from the beginning till the end with you. And I've never heard of that. And she said, well, it's because in the southern part, in the Netherlands, they don't exist. So if she had a good connection with this one, she said, if I would advise you, I would go to Capinga. And but she's an hour away. So I was like, okay, well, first let's see how the midwife in the area here, if they go along, and if we do not, if we end up the same way, then I can always choose that. But something in my gut was telling me I'm probably gonna go there. So with 20 weeks already, we discussed the birth plan, and I even had more knowledge because of the doula. She helped us making our birth plan and just asking the right questions, what do you want to do in this case? What do you want to do in this case? And so we didn't, the midwives, no, they couldn't help us. And I didn't want to be there either. So I ended up being without a midwife, I think for almost 9 weeks, 10 weeks. And I don't know why. I can't really remember why it took so long. I think I was sick. So I had an intake with Capinga. But then the first time I was sick, and the second time she had a birth. And I think, so it took a long time before I really saw her. So I was 30 weeks pregnant for the first time I saw her. I went in there with my husband and my son. And it was a very nice, it was a living room almost, feel like. And there was a candle, and she had an hour time for us instead of those 10, 20 minutes with the bigger midwiferys. And she asked me, like, what can I do for you? So I told her my story again and everything on it. And she just nodded and she said, actually, she reacted the same way you do. And the doula did. And she was like, no, he didn't do anything strange. He didn't wish anything weird. And she was just there. And it was, I had to cry because for the first time, I really felt heard and I felt understood and I didn't feel weird because here in my surroundings, I sometimes felt weird, also with friends and people I know. The way I wanted to have my birth, they also react a lot of like, oh, you're taking so much risk and are you sure? And so, yeah. And I think we ended up seeing each other maybe only 3 times because she, of course, is like a midwife by herself. So she has to attend births sometimes. She can't really plan that. But it felt really good. And I think in the third meeting we had, and we always drink tea as well. You know, there's time. So yeah, I would recommend a caseload midwife to everybody in the Netherlands. I'm not sure if it's a worldwide thing, but definitely in the Netherlands. And she said to me that she's fine with the doula. She knows her, but she also needs to know, like, what do you expect from the doula and what do you expect from me? So we had a talk about that. And I said also, like, well, the doula is really mainly important when I go to the hospital because then you probably not joining. She said, yes, I am. I'm like, really? She says, yes, I'm not, I'm going to be at your birth. Either it's a C-section or in the hospital or at home. I will be there. And maybe, she said, I remember, and I had to smile. She said, maybe with a C-section, you have to be a bit more sad if I can't attend. And then most of the times the doctor will allow it. But I'm at your birth. And just by knowing that the person that I was talking to, that I saw a couple of times, would be there, was for me so important to, and it felt so safe. And she had so much confidence in me, in us, in my husband and I. And she said, it's your birth, it's your wish. And if you want me to sit outside in the car, or you want me to be next to you holding your hand, whatever you want.
Love that. That's a true midwife. And you said that everyone should have caseload midwifery. And yes, that that's a way of a term also in other countries like Australia, for example. But it really just means an independent midwife.
Yeah,
That's
independent
what it
midwife.
means.
Yeah. And of course, there's people that are fine with the bigger midwives businesses. But for the people that are really looking for safety and really personal connection, which I think is very important if you want to have a home birth and feel confident and safe, then yeah, that's really nice to have an independent midwife. So yeah, and then it was a good pregnancy. I did had a lot of pains in the end, but yeah, and then I think with 39 weeks and 5 days, so 2 days before 40 weeks, I started having contractions during the day, but very like different, like in different times, not very regular yet. And then at night, I remember they were getting really regular. And I remember that at 2 a.m., I was like, okay, do I need to call her? Because she said to me, because she was so far away, she said, I'm not worried about anything. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is if I will be on time. So if you have the feeling the birth is starting, please call me. I will sleep further. Like, don't feel any guilt to waking me up. So at 2 a.m., I thought, okay, I'm going to call her. And she asked me a couple of questions. And she said, well, it doesn't sound like it really started. Definitely something started. But take some paracetamol, try to sleep, and let's see what the morning brings. So I did that. And then Tuesday, I had contractions again during the day. And I thought about my mom came over. My husband was at home taking care of our son. And we made a birthday cake. So some distraction And I think it was pretty regular now. So every 7 minutes I had a contraction, but I still could do everything. And at the end of the day, I kind of forgot to contact my doula and my midwife. So one of them was asking like, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, sorry. I'm doing really well. I have contractions every 7 minutes, I think. But if I look at my first birth, it probably takes another day before she comes." Um, and apparently my doula and my midwife, I think they had some contact, and they also said like, well, they didn't say that to me, but they thought it could happen this night. So my midwife said, just let me know if it's like starting or picking up, call me. So we went to bed. I had a nice warm shower. She also recommended doing that. And I tried to sleep. I think I kind of slept. But I think at 2, I woke up. I had to go to the toilet. I laid down. And then suddenly there was this like pang. I don't know. I still don't know what happened. But it was this really painful. And I almost thought I heard it as well. So, and then directly a contraction I've never experienced before. So I was like, okay, if I'm gonna have this contraction, I really had to breathe through it. If I'm gonna have this contraction in another 5 minutes, I think we need to call the doula and the midwife and my mom, because my mom would go. We would birth the baby downstairs, and my mom would go upstairs just in case my son would wake up because he was still sleeping at home. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna have a shower. So we walked to the shower, and with undressing already, they picked up. So I think it was every 3 minutes I had a really strong contraction. But it was manageable. I really could breathe through it, and yeah, there was no doubt I couldn't do this. So I went into the shower, and my husband, because we didn't expect it, we didn't put the bath up yet. So he went downstairs to put the bath up. And every now and then he came back to check on me. And in the shower, I did it by myself, which felt very good for my confidence to be able to breathe through it and to be with my body. And it went really smoothly. And then at a certain point, I was afraid of waking my baby son. So I said, we need to go downstairs. So in between contractions, I dried myself up and walked downstairs. And there, he already set it up. There was beautiful light. There was music. Like, he did a great job. And the bath was still running. I think that was half an hour later. And my mom came, I think, 2:45. So no, I'm 2:30 it started. So 2:30 it started, and my mom came, I think, 3:15. And she came inside, and she hugged me, and she went upstairs, took the dogs upstairs. We have 2 dogs as well. And I remember as soon as she was upstairs with the dogs and by my son, he was still asleep, I could really let go. And that shifted really something in the contractions and the way they were coming. By then, I think I sat on a birthing ball, like a big ball. And yeah, it went really quickly and fast. And I think the doula, she was there 3:45. I think quarter past 4, 45 minutes before she was born. Yeah, so 4:15, the doula arrived. And we agreed that she would take pictures of us, and if she was needed, she would step in. So she was mainly doing the pictures and checking the water if it was full enough. And my husband and I, we were together going through the contractions. And the funny part is that in between the contractions, I was very clear-minded. I could have a talk with the doula. I was even concerned about her feet getting cold. So I asked my husband to get some some warm shoes to put on for her. I was very clear. I could tell him exactly what he needed to do, that I wanted to drink or what. So that wasn't something I didn't expect it. I kind of expected to be in this bubble and really inside, but I was very clear in my head and very, yeah. And as soon as the contraction came, I said, "Oh yeah, here it's coming, it's coming." And then my husband came to me, and we went through it together. And what really helped me was, I once read it in a magazine of the chiropractor. I did as well, actually. That you can see a contraction in 5 different phases, and that the first phase is when you feel it coming, and then you can still control your breathing. And then the second one, it's getting more painful, and you have to really push yourself to keep on breathing. And in a third phase, just let it be the way it is. And then that's the shortest phase.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page.
And it really helps.
And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as the Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.
And then you can already recollect yourself and go to the next contraction. So that really, really helped me to cut it in pieces. And then at a certain point, the doula said, like, I think it's time to go into the bath. And my husband also, I remember saying to me, like, "Oh, you're doing great. You're almost there." And I was in my head, like, how do you know I'm almost there? I don't know. How do you know? This could take another hours. But yeah, then I stood up. And the moment I stood up, I spontaneously crossed my legs because a contraction came. And I think it was her dropping as well, really low into the pelvic, and a very big contraction. And then I went into the water, and it was really lovely, like warm, and I could relax. And because of the relaxing, I think she just, well, almost birthed, like she was almost there already. But because it's an interesting thing, and I've been thinking about this a lot, but I can't really, the only thing I can explain it is that it went so quickly, because I went into the bath, I think 4:45, and it started at 2:30. So that's like 2 hours and 15 minutes later. And I, in my head, wasn't prepared for giving birth already. I thought it's probably going to take a couple of hours, or like 6 hours, something like that. So I was in the bath, and I went down, and I felt, and the first thing that I thought was, like, this can't be the head, because this is too quick. This is not the case. And because the tissue felt very ribbly, very rough, I thought this is the membrane of my womb. And so a very strange thought came up in my head. I'm like, she is pushing down, but I'm not dilated far enough. So she's coming out through a total different way. So I kind of panicked, and I was really keeping her inside because the midwife wasn't there yet. And I said to them, there's really a big problem. I don't think I'm dilated enough, and the baby's really coming. You have to call the midwife. Where is she? And at that moment, she knocked. She came in, and I started explaining myself to her in my, "Oh my God, I don't think this is good." And she said to me very calmly, "I don't think what you're saying is possible, but if you want me to take a look, I can take a look." So they switched on light, and I turned over in the bath. And the moment I turned over, plop, the head came out. And I was like, oh my God. In that moment, I realized I'm birthing at home, and it worked. And oh my God, I did it. And I had to cry. And I don't know. It was such a silly moment just before she came into this world. I was like, it's going wrong, totally wrong. And the calmness, my midwife came in, and she said, like, I hear you, but I do not think that's possible, but I can take a look. and then we see what's going on. And yeah, I turned over, and my girl Jess, she just plop, no ring of fire, no ruptures, nothing. Just, and I think because I held her back for a little while, that the membrane could really relax. And yeah, the moment she was born with her head, I was like, I did it. And then we waited until the shoulders came out, and then I thought I waited another contraction, but then the midwife said, oh, you can take her, she can already like grab her. So I grabbed my baby girl, and she was tangled with the umbilical cord a little bit like a U around her neck. So I first had to undo that before I could actually get her to me. And then I just put her on my chest, and nobody touched her. Nobody touched me. And I gave birth to my baby girl. It was magical. It was really everything I needed to heal from the first birth, because that one was really traumatic, and everything during the birth as well was the opposite of what happened now. So yeah, she was on me, and she didn't cry directly, but her eyes were open. She looked at me. And apparently she didn't breathe either. I noticed as well. So I blew in her face to see if that happened. But she was just really relaxed. Or I think I didn't even blow in her face directly. I think the midwife said like, oh, you can try to rub her a little bit to see if there comes a cry. I think after a minute or something. And then yeah, a small little cry, and that's it. More, and she just, yeah, she was there. And I think within 10 minutes she was already drinking. Yeah, it was magical birth. And then we decided to do a half lotus birth, or that was my wish, because with the first birth, I think the birthing of the placenta was very traumatic. They almost put me into surgery to get it out because it took too long, and it was really horrendous. So with this one, I also was a bit stressed, but she said like, if you're not losing blood and you feel good, and then we have time. So yeah, my husband said like, can you please, to the midwife and the doula, yeah, go in, sit into our kitchen, so we have the golden hour together. And we just enjoyed, and we sat there. I was in the bath with my baby on my chest, my husband around me, my baby boy was still asleep, and it was just, yeah, it was very holy and very, very good for us. And I think after an hour, maybe a little less, the midwife said like, do you have the feeling you still have contractions? And I said like, well, not that much, to be honest. And she said, well, you can maybe give it a gentle pull if you would like to get the placenta being born. Because I felt cold and I wanted to get out. And she said like, we can get out with the placenta still inside you, but the chances are that it then maybe falls out. And we had our bath on our rock. She said, oh, it could be better if you birthed it in the water. So I tried, but it didn't really work. I didn't know how to pull it, and if it was too much or not. So in the end, I asked her. She said like, do you want me to help? And said, yes, please. So she helped, and without any force or any, it was just, and there it was. So yeah, we put the placenta in a bowl. We gave the baby to her papa, her dad, and then I could step out of the water. And I remember stepping out of the bath and thinking like, did I just birth the baby? Like I felt so strong, also with my hips and everything. I could easily step out. Then I moved to the couch. I got a checkup. No tears, nothing. Everything was perfectly fine. And then I got my baby back. And then my son woke up. So I think that was a very special moment as well, to introduce my son to my daughter, and the fact that he just slept through it all. Very magical. And my mom was there, and then the midwife, she left pretty early because she had another one that was kind of birthing, I think. And the doula helped a little bit, drank a coffee and was gone, I think at 7. So she was born at 5 in the morning. And then we decided to also burn the umbilical cord. So we had this special box for it. Well, it wasn't a very long umbilical cord. So we were burning it with candles. But in the end, there came so much smoke from it that I couldn't really protect my baby. So I was like, okay, this is not the way I thought it would go. So let's stop the burning and just cut the cord. But we did that all by ourselves. There was no doula, no midwife. And in the Netherlands, you have kraamzorg. It's somebody that comes for a week with you to help you with the first things and to be support for you. And she came at 9. So before that, we already had the umbilical cord cut. But it was very special to do it just with my mom, my husband, and my son around us to cut the cord, and just with us at home. And then the day started. Then just he had to go to daycare, the dogs had to be walked, and then she was there. So
Just the normal, magical, miraculous day.
yeah, it really was. It really was. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of home birth. It's just that the mixture of magic and just the absolute most normal thing in the world. Like it's
Yeah.
just really at the same time. It's just there's nothing more amazing than
Yeah.
attending a home birth.
It was perfect. Yeah, she came into the world, the day started, we were at home, it went all good, and so fast. Unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then what the midwife also said behind in the afterwards, she said, like, now you really know how you birth, how your body births. Because it does have a couple of days. It needs a couple of days before the real birthing starts.
Mm.
But nobody touched you, nobody checked you, and it went really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that, about your 4 days of going with kind of prodromal or early stages of labor, with your waters breaking. And, for most women, when the waters break, now you had probably a hind water leak because it wasn't like a big gush, it was that kind of trickle, right? Which is different usually. But usually when the waters break, most women will go into labor in the next 24, 48 hours. Some
Yeah.
take 3 days. As you know, and I think you said before we started recording, you probably listened to that. I had a client who went for 4 days before she had her baby, and she had her waters broken for that long before she kicked on, and she just had a 4 hour labor and birth when it finally kicked off. And sometimes what can happen too is that the baby's head is still quite high in the pelvis when the waters break. And so I think if anyone's listening, it's a first time mom or whatever, really, if that happens to you, if your waters break and you don't go into labor within 24 hours, 48 hours, like be proactive to like maybe go to a chiro and get alignment or an osteopath or, look into ways to like spinning babies or things to help maybe potentially bring the baby lower, because that can be one of the components to why sometimes you go for a longer time before you go into labor or you have that prodromal labor because your body's trying to get your baby lower to kick off quote unquote real labor, which will like not stop. The stopping and starting is like your body trying to do that. I just had that thought, but when you spoke before, just to give that piece of information for anyone, who might have that happen as they go into labor, but also a component that you mentioned before we started recording, and I think a little bit throughout your story, but I really want to emphasize is that you were kind of, especially in the first labor, right? You had your best friend that you love, but kind of interfering a little bit in you kind of kicking off, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, like how
Yeah.
we sometimes we bring in people we love, or we just bring them in too early, which makes us then peter out with the contractions, and that I feel like so many women were just so sensitive that really just you and your husband is probably the best, especially when you know you're a sensitive, highly sensitive person, not bringing people too soon to your labor and birth
Definitely.
space.
Definitely. Yeah, and the funny thing is that in the end, so we went to the hospital. My best friend was at home taking care of my dog. Through a miscommunication, she thought, "Oh, I'm welcome to be at the birth," and she stepped into the hospital, and she was there. And in the end, she was at the birth. So that was really good. Like I didn't ask her, but she interpreted me asking her to come. So in the end, she was there, and it was perfect because it was all I needed. But that was really at the end. So yeah,
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 beautiful. So if you had a first-time mama who's in front of you right now, who's about to have her first baby and she really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
yeah, definitely, definitely. For me, at least, if we had a doula at the first birth, I think it would have turned out a different birth. So it really helped us to have a doula. And if you have the chance to have an independent midwife, if that's what you long, for me, it was really important to have somebody from the beginning till the end, and that has the confident believing in you, but also in herself. So an independent midwife, yeah, I would, if we had to be pregnant again, then definitely an independent midwife, definitely. Yeah, and a doula also. Plus, I think also with my second pregnancy, I listened to this podcast hours and hours and hours because it's so inspiring. And although I was really scared to go on this podcast, I also thought like it was so inspiring for me. So I should really tell my story to maybe help one person that recognizes themselves in my story to, yeah, to make that step and have that home birth. That really, yeah, it really, I think it's the best way for yourself and for your child to be born. And of course, there's always circumstance that allows it not to happen. But if it is and everything is normal, then yeah, go for it. Yeah.
It's how birth always has been. It's just been birth,
Yeah.
right? Just go back 100 years, a little bit
Hmm.
more. That was just birth. You always just birthed at
Yeah.
home. Like that was just
Yeah.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be lovely if I can help other people inspiring to have their home birth. So that's why I also push myself to come on here and tell my story. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So
Thank you so much, Jolene, for doing so. And I am certain that you will have people that are inspired by your story.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as The Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.